Hello and welcome to Paranormal Activity, your destination for uplifting stories of close encounters with the phenomenally divine. I'm your host, Amanda Elo'Esh, and I created this podcast to fill a gap I deeply felt, a space for sharing paranormal experiences that elevate rather than frighten. I've always been fascinated by the mysterious and unexplained, but over the time I realized that what we feed our consciousness shapes our energy, just like what we feed our body shapes our health. I used to love dark ghost stories until I noticed how those heavy energies started showing up in my life. So I asked myself, why not explore the paranormal in a way that's spiritually nourishing? That's how paranormal was born. This is a place where we can expand our awareness through stories that affirm the magic and mystery of the universe. And of course, I love the play on words, prayer-normal, because normal has never really described me or my life. My hope is that by bringing these profound spiritual experiences into everyday conversation, we can validate our own encounters with the unseen and remember that the extraordinary is perhaps more normal than we think. So I'm starting all of this out with my own stories, and we'll see how far we go on this sacred journey together. You might notice the sound quality isn't exactly studio level. That's because I'm starting this podcast on a prayer and a shoestring budget. No fancy equipment, no production team, just me, a mic, a cheap mic at that, and a deep desire to share something meaningful. My hope is that the content itself shines bright enough to make up for the very lo-fi vibe. So without further ado, I'll start by sharing a bit about myself. I've had more than my fair share of profound, paranormal, and downright mystical experiences. They're not mundane, far from it, but they happen so often for me, and not all of them just stick in my memory. It's hard to remember them all. Sometimes I'll witness something absolutely incredible, the kind of moment that could change a person's life, and I'll think, wow, this might not even make it into my long-term memory. I might not even remember it in a month or a year from now. And again, it's not because I take it for granted, but because I seem to attract and manifest these extraordinary experiences in abundance. So I'm going to share some of my personal experiences and hope it provides some insight and maybe even some curiosity and openings for your own connections to the spiritually uplifting paranormal, that is. And I believe that's happening all around us all the time. Yeah. The first stories I want to share happened when I was a child. Actually, the first one was before I was in this human body speaking to you from this human mouth. It took a while before I even put it all together. I have this memory of playing with a dachshund mutt that my family had, and her name was Toodles. And I remember playing with Toodles in our family living room behind the big rounded couch that was like the centerpiece of our living room. But when I mentioned that to my mom, she said, "Honey, you must be confused because Toodles was long gone before you were even born." And I just thought that was curious and kind of dismissed it as maybe it was one of the other dogs we had after I was born. So, but it still stuck with me, that dachshund. Now, I grew up Mormon, and I haven't been a member since 1990, and generally don't follow their belief system, and have a lot of conflicted feelings about the origins of the Mormon Church, the real origins, not the ones just shared by the Mormon Church. If you're curious about that, reach out and I'll hook you up with some really amazing resources. But I digress. Anyway, so I generally don't follow the Mormon belief system, but there are some beliefs that do really resonate with me, and one of them is that we choose our family. In fact, I believe that I chose my challenges and gifts as well as the family that I would be born into. And there are quite a few spiritual traditions from different Native American tribes, Hinduism, and Tibetan Buddhism, as well as folks like Edgar Cayce, Dolores Cannon, and Abraham Hicks, and others, just countless others. They all mention some form of choosing our human circumstances before being born or incarnated. And so that has helped me to be a lot more accepting of the challenges in my life and to look for the deeper purpose to them. Like, I chose this, right? And if you're familiar, there's an author named Carolyn Elliott who wrote Existential Kink, and she says, having is evidence of wanting. And she's strictly talking about the subconscious, and I very much agree with that. But I feel like it's also having is evidence of preordaining or pre-designing. Sometimes the challenges help me to gain strengths and insights that I can't imagine being able to develop any other way than by going through those challenges. Sometimes the challenges seem to be a calling for me to bring my own gifts and wisdom to help others out, Meeting challenges isn't a sign of bad luck unless we make that up about it. The challenges I've experienced, they've helped me to let go of resisting and wrestling with difficulties and instead to show up to them present and focused on how to bring a solution, how to bring peace, how to bring harmony, whatever it is that's needed that I can provide. Once I was an actual human being as a kid. I was never taught about meditation, but I was really passionate about understanding what I learned at school and at church and from books. And one day when I was, I guess I was probably about 8 or 9, I remember, in general, I would sit in my dad's chair. And you know, all the homes with a dad seem to have the dad chair, right? Ours was a beige recliner, and I would sit there cross-legged and I'd play or read or just think about stuff. And this one particular day, I was thinking about forever. I wanted to really understand eternity, time with no beginning and no end. And as I tried to really comprehend what that was, I found myself in this completely blissful state. And I was just suddenly one with everything. There are different words for it. Having an epiphany, I guess, is bigger than that. Samadhi experience, sublimating, having a transformational experience, becoming one with everything. There was no separation. And it wasn't just time that was infinite. It was infinite everything, all the feelings, all the experiences, all the thoughts, all the timelines, all the possibilities. It was really beyond what I could possibly describe with the words available to me as I speak them to you now. And I have no idea, no clue how long I was in that state. Time had no meaning anymore. But the moment I tried to wrap my human consciousness around it, what I was experienced, to make a thought about it, like, oh, this is what it is. This is, I get it. I get it. Here's what it is. I was jolted out of that ecstatic state and back into my 3D reality with my mundane consciousness. And I had that experience a few times. But in that moment, I realized that almost more like remembering. It was more like remembering that I was an eternal being that chose to have this limited human experience. And that I did choose the challenges. I did choose the family. I chose the gifts. I chose the things I was here to learn and the things I was here to accomplish. And I also realized that I couldn't possibly understand infinity with my human mind, because my human mind was finite. My human body and daily reality was finite. Now, this was 1979, maybe 1980. So there was no YouTube, no Google, no Eckhart Tolle. And as a young Mormon girl, I didn't have any access to spiritual texts other than the Mormon ones. And they were definitely not providing insights on connecting with the infinite spiritual essence that we all are. This is way out there. I never witnessed anyone talking about such things, and I didn't really have words for it myself, so I never really tried to talk about it with anyone. I just kind of assumed, like, okay, what I'm experiencing is very special. It is not common. I kind of assumed I was the only one. I mean, I did. I assumed I'm the only one because I didn't see anybody else talking about it. And just assumed like nobody else could possibly understand it. And so, yeah, I never tried to talk about it with anyone. But it did spark something really big. It did make me really fascinated with what I experienced and how I might possibly play a role in helping others to have similar experiences so that they could also expand their consciousness and feel more directly connected with the infinite, with the holy, with the otherworldly, the multiverse, God, source, their whatever name is never going to fully encapsulate it. And that was another thing that I realized was like, oh, okay, well, the Mormon Church, that's a specific system that can't possibly, it's not possible to wrap a container around a system of belief around the infinite. It's just not. It's not humanly possible. Sometimes as a kid, I just knew things about others that they hadn't told anyone. They certainly hadn't told me. Sometimes I thought that they had. Sometimes I was certain that they had told me, but I would make some reference to it and would get a very startled reaction with questions about how I knew it. How I knew what I was talking about, and insisting like, no, I never told you. I never told anyone that. So it's been an interesting journey to learn how to be a human, learn the rules of being a human in a physical body and the rules of the 3D world in this time of expanding and evolving consciousness and the expansion of what humans are capable of, not just, with their bodies, but consciousness. Our consciousness is evolving, and the dialogue, the conversation about quantum reality and the multiverse and UFOs and aliens, first, contact and disclosure and all these things have opened our minds, many of us, to these possibilities. So over time, some of the gifts that I had, especially about knowing other people's business when they hadn't intended for me to know, you know, as a young person, it wasn't like it is now. There wasn't any. It didn't feel like there was any place for it. It was like, yeah, I can be infinite, and I can, those things are great, and it's wonderful to know that that's a reality. But it's very different than the human reality, and the human reality is limited. It's short term, relatively speaking, when you're thinking about eternity. So like, just play the human game. And I did. I saw it and see it as it's like a game. We're in this game. We're here to, we have certain goals, certain challenges, certain things, certain gifts to accomplish. And it's different for each player. And so for lack of opportunity to really talk with other people about what I was experiencing and really have someone who could understand my gifts, over time, a lot of them faded. Now, it's reminding me of another profound thing that I did as a child. I was probably around the same age, probably around 8 or 9 years old. And I was realizing, like, I do have some special abilities and gifts that they were kind of seen. They were kind of seen by other people. I was considered very, very smart and mature for my age. And I was put into a program for gifted kids starting in elementary, and it went into junior high and high school. So seen as gifted, and there were a lot of times I said things to my mom and to other adults, and they just kind of were blown away. And they, my mom did a pretty decent job of cultivating my creativity, but she didn't have the same experiences I did, and I wasn't really telling her about them either. And just nobody seemed to have a clue really how to help me to develop those gifts. And again, mostly because they didn't really fully know what they were. I didn't fully know what they were, but I did recognize that I could probably use some help, some mentorship. And so as this little, again, like 8 or 9 year old, I, again, in Dad's chair, sat in with the, lotus position. Not really know what meditation was, but I dropped in and I connected with my future self, because I just had this hit, like my future self knows a lot more about my life, my challenges, what I'm here to do, what my gifts are, and my future self can be my child's mentor, can mentor me as a child. And so I opened up this portal, and it was like, of course I can open up a portal because I can step into samadhi. I can step into infinity. I can become one with everything. And so of course I can open up this portal to myself in the future to get downloads. And I would have these profound visions. And I would see myself in like a circle of people, and I was using my voice in different ways, like creating tones, sounds, and the words out of my mouth. And it was creating frequencies that were activating very similar states of bliss, connectedness with Source, the holy, the multiverse, the infinite. And I had multiple visions similar to that. And then at some point in my 30s, I remembered that experience as a kid and like, oh, it's time to start consciously sending transmissions, information, wisdom back for that child self. And I started to do that and found myself a medicine facilitator who serves sacred medicine to people, who creates safe and sacred ceremony space, keeps sacred altars, and uses sacred sound healing to help people to have their own unique connection with Source, God, Goddess, the Holy, the Infinite. And there have been certain times in these powerful moments where I'm really feeling like I'm in my purpose right now. I am resonant. I am in the flow. I am feeling powerful, sacred energies moving through. And I want to send this transmission back to my child self and realize as I'm doing it, like, oh, this is the exact vision. This is the exact moment that I saw. And it just didn't make any sense in that moment, really. I mean, it made some sense. Like I understood, okay, my voice, speaking, singing, sounds. But I had no clue. Medicine ceremony, leading ceremonies. I mean, I was a female member of the Mormon Church, you know. The women didn't have and don't have that kind of privilege to lead ceremonies. So it wasn't even in my human realm of possibility as a child. But that was, you know, like amazing. I opened up this time portal and continue to find myself in anytime I'm in a moment where I really feel like I am fully living my purpose and that something powerful is moving through, I send it back to that child self. And many times I've realized like, oh, I saw this exact vision as a child. So it worked. And I'm really profoundly amazed at the deep insight and wisdom that my child self had. Yeah. And the human reality is that over time, you know, some of the gifts that I had, especially about knowing other people's business when they hadn't intended for me to know, I consciously shut it down. And then some of the gifts, you know, I questioned as I got older because no one else seemed to be in a place to possibly understand. And so wasn't talking about it with others. It wasn't being reflected back to me. There was nothing here strengthening it. It was like a muscle that got flabby. And I sometimes even see it as like my magical self was sitting at this magical tea party, like the Mad Hatter's Alice in Wonderland Mad Hatter's tea party. And I have this table set up with all kinds of magical experiences waiting for the guests to arrive, and like they just never arrived. And over time I got bored and kind of distracted and kind of fell asleep. And it was like parts of me, certain magical parts of me that yeah, there just was no space for it as a teenager. It was not cool, it wasn't accepted, it wasn't seen, it wasn't talked about, there was no way of engaging it, and it just shut down. So I disconnected from a lot of it, and I will continue to share more about me and how I've been waking it up. But, you know, over the decades, I've learned more about myself. I've been focusing on reawakening my gifts, and the world conversation about paranormal activity all kinds of paranormal activity has evolved, and now it's much easier to talk about my experiences and share my stories. There are more commonly understood words for it. It doesn't take so much time to share a basic experience, because yeah, we're just more familiar. We're waking up. We're all waking up. And then because I listen to others share their stories and hear how helpful it is, I wanted to put some of my own experiences out there for those of you who are really inspired by these things. So I am also really open to interviewing those of you who have more spiritually oriented and uplifting stories, miracles, profound healings, psychics, clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairgustance, clairaudience. If you'd like to share about the supernatural, or as I call it, the paranormal, to differentiate it from the dark entity, negative, demonic stories that I feel just feed those things when we talk about them. Honestly, I think it just feeds them, makes them stronger. And then it's like we're evoking it in our own consciousness, in our own lives, in our own spaces. And yeah, I'm not up for that. I'm not about that. So that's why I'm into the paranormal. And if you'd like to reach out with questions or suggest a story or someone for us to interview, please feel free to contact us at Living Wisdom Church CA, all one word, Living Wisdom Church CA, that is CA as in California, Living Wisdom Church CA at gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Thank you so much for taking a moment to come and sit by our fire and hear some stories about the paranormal. We hope it brings some light and maybe a little conscious expansion to your day. Until we get to meet again, this is Amanda Elo'Esh with Paranormal Activity. May the source be with you.